So welcome everyone for joining us today for Shop Talk with APPX with COSA. My name is Lisa Johnston. I'm the Administrative Coordinator for COSA. And so APEX is going to talk to us a little bit about a study in email classification. So let's see. So basically, we've just done the welcome. I'm going to turn this over to the Apex people here in a minute. We'll have time for questions and answers either throughout or at the end. So if you have a question, you can type it in chat, and or when we get to the end in questions, you can raise your hand and unmute and ask that way too. So without further ado, I'm going to now turn this over to John Selvage with Apex. And John, thank you for joining us today, and take it away.
Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate it very much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Selvage, and I'm president of APPX Software. We're the creators of Axiom Archives and Records Management System. I am joined today by Steve Frizzell, the CEO of APPX Software and chief architect of the Axiom product. We'd certainly like to thank Lisa and Becky Jules and Ann Ackerson and all the other great folks at COSA for giving us the opportunity today to present today's Shop Talk. And with that, I'd like to go ahead and get started. Today's presentation is going to be a little bit different from ones that we've done in the past. We've often talked about the various procedures that archives have for the different tasks that they are responsible for, and oftentimes we'll talk about how Axiom integrates with those types of procedures. But today we're going to talk a little bit about some of the research that we've done into an existing problem that with the hopes of coming up with a solution that meets the needs of many of the state archives. And so, of course, we've got the title page, A Study in Automated Email Classification. So if you'll slide, please.
Actually, John, you have control. If you look just above your slides, you can just control it yourself.
Isn't that amazing? Thank you so much. Okay, so here's the abstract for today's discussion. I'm not going to read it word for word, but the bottom line is that archives have been presented with a truly monumental task of classifying emails that are sent and received by state government personnel. In the past, you only had to worry about just thousands of paper documents that were being generated on a daily basis. But with the advent of email and the ease of use of email, the number of documents that need to be classified is growing at what might actually be an exponential rate. Various archives have tried different means of classifying emails, but they all often boil down to volume that can be processed being directly proportional to the number of personnel doing the classifying. So as the number of emails increases, it really becomes impractical to just simply throw more resources at the problem. So today we'll talk briefly about, well, what's the problem? Some of the prior research that has been done in this area. What's the solution if we're looking for something that's going to be automated? And how is APPX approaching the problem? And of course, the solution. And then we'll close things out today. So as the slide indicates here, the initial question that that archives or record centers are presented with is something that is presented to them actually a record, something that's of interest, something that really needs to be archived or kept with state records. It's always been a time-consuming task in the past. Like I said, even with just paper, it's always been an issue. But even so, we deal with customers that have millions of containers of documents. And so with the advent of emails, that problem has simply multiplied. So imagine that. So what's the problem? Now that a million documents or more is being multiplied by some factor. Now we're talking about emails. Well, that's obviously going to be a great big issue for a lot of archives. And I was thinking I could probably have put a lot of folks' picture in here, but um, so I opted just to go ahead and use a cartoon. But the message is clear that there's a lot of emails that need to be classified and a short period of time to do it in. Now, I've used the word classified already a couple of times, and that can mean different things to different people, but I'll simplify it in this way. We need to determine whether a particular email is a record or a non-record. Is it something that the archive or the record center even needs to concern itself with? So we know that this has been a time-consuming issue for folks in the past, and the biggest issues are that emails are very easy to generate. And on top of that, they have a tendency to get mixed up so that you have government business and personal emails and spam all bundled together in one location. And so the task of classifying these emails is made even worse. The problem is that it's not going to get any better. So as I pointed out here, that the volume of emails is going to continue to grow. And you can continue to throw people at it to try to resolve that problem, but at some point the volume of emails is just going to outpace the ability to be able to classify them. And so additional manual resources at some point will be less practical as the volume increases. The good news is that there has been some research conducted in this area. Stanford University has conducted some research, and that ultimately evolved into a system called EPAD, and that's actually still in use today. So some good research was conducted there. I believe we actually have some folks from Virginia today, so a shout out to you there that the State Library of Virginia has also tackled the problem. They were actually tasked with the process of only having to deal with 1.5 million emails from 4 years of then Governor Tim Kaine's time in office. That would be known as the Kaine Email Project. If it was 1.5 million emails 14 years ago, you can only imagine just how bad the situation is today in terms of the number of emails that are involved. So if there are any Tar Heel fans out there, we've got the University of North Carolina has also done some research of their own, and that actually culminated in the creation of the R-Atom system. So there has been a lot of research already done in this area, and each one of the solutions has its own merits and, of course, has its own challenges as well. And of course, this is my opportunity to put in a shameless plug for Axiom. Um, we are the creator of Axiom, which is a comprehensive archive and record management system, and we've already been installed in 5 states, including Washington, D.C. We've also recently entered into the county archive space as well. And I mention all that not just to make it a shameless plug, but also to let you know that yes, we are familiar with the problems that archives face, and in particular the subject of classifying emails. So our experience and the research that we've conducted so far has led us to believe that there is a solution to this problem that can be automated. So we're continuing that research even today. We're taking a more systematic approach to the problem. And I'm sorry to say that ultimately this boils down to a math problem. Uh, it's um, it's easy to look at this and say, well, we're talking about words, but ultimately, it's the words themselves. It's the relationships between the words. and the relationships that emails have to one another that makes this more of a math problem. Fortunately, we have real mathematicians working on this problem for us. Not this guy in particular. I wouldn't mind having him on the team, but we do have some real folks that are looking at it from a statistical standpoint. So the bottom line is that we need to be able to take a certain segment of emails and be able to train some system to say this one is a record and this one is not. If we're able to do that over, let's say, a few hundred or even maybe a few thousand emails, then we can come up with a system that is able to understand what comprises an email that's a record and which ones are not records, that they are non-records. When we're doing things manually, we intuitively assign certain features to them. We look for certain keywords or certain arrangements of words to help us determine whether it's a record or not. And some of the questions that we ask ourselves is, who is the email from? Who is it to? What is the email talking about? Are there any key words that are in the email, and what is their relative position to one another? Is it purely personal content, or is it actually maybe a mix of content? So there's a lot of information that we kind of take for granted when we do a manual classification of an email. But what we need to be able to do is to quantify that information so that we can be able to ultimately create what we'll call clusters of emails. The idea is that if we can create these clusters, then we can take the next email and say, well, which cluster does it seem to be most closely related to? And over time, we will be able to say that, yes, this is a record, or no, it's not, it's a non-record. Now, this first bullet item is just to sound smart. Basically, what it boils down to is there's going to be a certain number of features that will be made available to us that will help us to determine whether an email is a record or not. And it's the collation of those features together that will actually give us the information that we're looking for. Once we've done that, then we can establish certain probabilities as to whether something is or isn't a record. Once certain probabilities exceed a threshold, then we can actually say, yes, that is a record, or no, it is not. Now, the last point that I'm making here about failure is an important one. The failure to classify as a particular email is not a failure at all. What it simply means is that the email that is presumably failed to be classified is simply one that has other features that aren't easily recognized by the current set of data that we've gathered so far. As such, we can then use those types of emails as additional training emails so that future emails that are similar to it can then be classified. So again, the failure to classify really isn't a failure. It just simply points out that, yeah, we need some broader sets of data to help us establish whether a particular email is a record or not. What ultimately will wind up happening is that we'll actually have not a single cluster of information, but actually a group of clusters. As you might imagine, government emails don't fall into a single category. There's going to be a number of different categories out there. And for each one of them, and perhaps even each one of them having multiple clusters, there is going to be this collection of clusters that will help us identify whether something is a record or is not a record. Now, in addition to comparing emails to determine whether they are like another email that happens to be a record, there are also going to be some features that will allow us to do automated classification. In other words, if you see something for the governor, let's say we've decided up front that everything from or to the governor is considered a record, then those types of features can be added to the system to say with certainty that if it's from the governor or to the governor, then it's a record. Or perhaps if a certain keyword is mentioned, then it's automatically considered a record. It's difficult to actually have the opposite kind of scenario because just because, let's say, I'm talking about this weekend's football game, well, the presence of the word football might imply that it's a non-record. But just because I mentioned football in the email doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not also talking about other things. So we may have certain things that are absolutes, but it's also possible to have some things that are non-records based on absolutes, such as if I get an email, a spam email, let's say, from a sports betting site, that would be something that we could automatically categorize as not being a record. You can execute multiple iterations of these types of classifications so that you get a growing list of emails that have already been classified. And with each iteration, you actually wind up creating a larger and larger collection that you can then use to help identify the next set of data. Now, this in and of itself doesn't solve all the problems. There are still plenty of issues that are out there. Ingesting emails of various types, dealing with attachments, and a number of other issues are still out there. So this certainly isn't the end of the road for us in terms of the research that we're conducting. Now, our research has led us to go ahead and create a prototype that actually does do classification. And so far it has done very well. So we're evaluating exactly what that means. What are the statistics surrounding that? Is it 99% accurate? But in addition to that, we also need to conduct some research regarding human classification of emails, because we kind of made the assumption all along that anything that has been manually done is 100% accurate. And as we all know, that's not necessarily true. So people do make mistakes. So how would this classifier compare to a person who's actually doing it manually? And so ultimately, we will be presenting findings on how that compares, with the assumption that, yes, we want to be able to perform at least as well as an individual who's performing these classifications, with at least that level of confidence that that we have successfully and accurately classified the email. We don't anticipate actually having any kind of a finished product this year. It's likely to happen sometime next year, but we will have demonstrations available at the end of this month at the COSA conference. So if anyone is interested in seeing the results of our early research on it, please feel free to drop by and take a look at it. Now, once the algorithm has been fully developed, we should be able to take that functionality and extend it to use the same technique to actually categorize emails. That's the classifications and categorization are obviously closely related, but categorizing, think of it more like tagging emails. So what are the topics that email touches on? And so with this type of a classifier, we could tag certain things within a collection of trial emails and use that then to help us in tagging additional emails. In addition, we look forward to identifying the entities within individual emails. That's really just a fancy word for saying the word noun. So what are the persons? What are the places and the locations, the social security numbers, if those happen to appear, phone numbers? What are all those different things that might appear in emails that can actually help to serve to provide additional tags? In addition, we look to include lexicons. Put simply, a lexicon is essentially a dictionary of like-minded terms. It can be a single word, or it actually can be a phrase as well. So having lexicons would actually help us to perform both classification and categorization, so that we'd be able to say that, this is a finance, or this is a legal, this is a medical, um, and we can actually build our own lexicons as well. Again, once the technique is complete, it's not going to be limited to just email content. The first step that we're going to take beyond emails would be for email attachments. Those are critical, and actually are potentially more important than the email itself, the email body. So we would be able to apply this to the content of those attachments, and subsequently we would be able to apply it to just any document that is electronic, such as Word documents, text files, even Excel spreadsheets could be converted into some kind of a text file that we could then analyze using this same technique to be able to classify and categorize the information contained therein. Another important feature would be redaction. Um, you can manually go back and redact emails. That would certainly take a long period of time to do. But once the training is complete and we have taught the system how to identify what is something that needs to be redacted, then it could actually perform the redactions themselves. Um, Again, that would require that we go back and analyze the results to ensure that the accuracy is as close to as 100% as even a human could be able to perform, since redactions are obviously very important. But the main thrust here is that we would be able to do automated processing of classification and categorization, redactions, and so on, automatically once the system has been trained with a set of data that users have already provided. Okay. That pretty much wraps up our work for today. Again, I'd like to reiterate that we will be able to provide demonstrations for the product at the COSA conference. I believe that's 3 weeks away now. So if you have questions, please feel free to drop by and take a look. Also, if anyone has any stories about their particular archives and the problems that they've encountered with electronic records in particular, we would love to hear from you, because any kind of information that we can receive on issues that people are encountering would certainly assist in the effort in correctly identifying those things that are records and non-records, and also being able to categorize the emails as well. So we would certainly welcome any feedback that anyone has for their particular issues that they're encountering as archives. So Lisa, I believe that's it for what we wanted to present today.
Okay, John, thank you so much. That's a very tantalizing look at what's coming. So for those of you going to be in Nashville, I guess you'll get to actually see what it's going to look like. So I know we all are faced with how to deal with these emails. Does anybody have any particular questions? I know once we get to see it, we'll probably have lots of questions, but anybody at this point have a question for John, or an area that you've run across that you're concerned about, would they be able to cover it, something like that. So you can either type it in chat or go ahead and uh, raise your hand, and we'll see if we can unmute you. I think we can. Becky and I are have different settings on these setups sometimes. So, but anybody have any questions? Yeah. So, John, I appreciate sharing the information and a look at what's coming, and we appreciate everything that you've got. So, um, I will go ahead and start uh, finishing up here on the slides. But if somebody is typing, or if they decide to raise their hand, we'll go ahead and give them a chance to ask questions. So. Again, thank you for being our Shop Talk presenter today. We'd like to remind everyone that we have some more upcoming webinars. Our normal monthly COSA member webinars are normally the last Thursday of the month. So this month, we're going to get to know enslaved.org and what the work they're doing regarding uh, historic records about enslaved people. So I think that one's going to be really interesting. And then October, we're going to do our State Archives showcase, and we're going to look at the archives in New York and in New Jersey. So we think those will be interesting webinars, and you can go register for those now if you're interested. Of course, we have Siri webinars coming up again, October 11th, in honor of Electronic Records Day. We will have access denied, and so that'll be another interesting one to register for so that you can participate in that. As always, we appreciate you and hope you'll reach out to us. And there's lots of ways to reach out to COSA. So just these are some of the ways that you can find out more information about what COSA does, what COSA has, or just how to get in touch with us. So we have a question from Barbara Austin, John. She said, is this building on BULK extractor and how is it different?
But no, it does not use bulk extractor.
Okay, and so she said, so how is it different? I don't know if you can go into that at this stage of where you're at, but that was the second part of her question.
Sure. I'm not sure that I could give the details on that, but we will certainly find out the answer for it and make sure we have it available for at the COSA conference.
Okay, great. Thank you, Barbara, for that question. So again, everyone, thank you so much for attending today. There's, as always, will be hopefully be a little feedback. Um, and we appreciate you coming with us and look for more information from APPX about this upcoming change. And we look forward to seeing some of you in person in Nashville, and everyone else, we'll see you at the next COSA webinar. So thank you very much today, and you have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you all soon. Take care, everyone.